She stood at the table when the billionaire turned to his associate and spoke in Russian. "Hey, does this one even understand where she is, or did they drag her straight out of the gutter?" The billionaire said it in Russian to a black waitress at one of Chicago's most expensive restaurants. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Meridian. Can I— Oh, it talks." He turned to his associate and kept going in Russian. "These ones, they smile, they nod, but there is nothing behind the eyes." He laughed. "I bet she does not even know who her father is." His associate looked away. Nobody said a word. She stood there, notepad shaking in her hand. He spoke Russian so she would not understand. But what came out of her mouth next made the entire restaurant stop breathing. Wow. But that is not even the craziest part. Wait until you hear what happened after he walked out that door. Let me take you back before the billionaire, before the insult, before any of it. Brielle Harlan was standing in the staff hallway behind the kitchen. The espresso machine hissed on the other side of the wall. Clattered plates. The smell of roasted bone marrow drifted through the door every time someone pushed it open. She straightened her apron, checked her notepad, and slipped a small leather book deeper into her pocket. A phrase book, old and worn at the edges. She carried it every shift. Nobody ever asked about it. Cameron Hayes, the sous chef, leaned through the kitchen pass. "Heads up, B. Table 12 tonight is a VIP situation. Some billionaire and his crew. Big money. Bad attitude." Brielle nodded. "Got it. One more thing," Cameron said. "The hostess told me he asked for a more experienced server." His words. Brielle did not react. She had heard that kind of request before. She knew what more experienced usually meant. That was when Alexander Thorne walked in. Alexander owned the Meridian. He was the kind of man who never raised his voice because he never needed to. Every staff member respected him, not because he demanded it, but because he earned it every single day. Alexander looked at the hostess. "Who is on table 12 tonight?" "Brielle, sir, but the guest requested someone more experienced." "Brielle handles my best tables. She stays." That was it. No debate, no discussion. He said it the way you say, "The sky is blue." Then he walked away. Brielle headed toward the dining room. On her way through, she passed a French couple near the entrance. They were trying to explain a food allergy to the busboy, stumbling through broken English, getting nowhere. Brielle stopped, leaned in, and spoke to them in perfect French. Fluent Parisian accent, clean grammar. She explained the allergen information, answered their questions, and smiled. The couple stared at her like she had just performed a magic trick. She moved on, did not think twice about it. To her, it was nothing special. Nobody on the staff knew how many languages Brielle Harlan spoke. She never told them. And she was about to walk straight into table 12. Now, let me tell you what Garrett Langford said when Brielle was not supposed to understand. It did not start with one insult. It was a whole performance. The moment she walked up to table 12, Langford glanced at her for half a second. Then he turned to his associate, Bryce Caldwell, and switched to Russian. Finally, they sent the girl. Bryce smiled, but said nothing. Langford kept going. He told Natalia, his Russian-born assistant sitting next to him, that he did not need to waste good manners on the help. He said Brielle probably grew up in a neighborhood where people shoot each other over sneakers. He said he could smell poverty on her from across the table. Natalia looked down at her plate. She did not laugh. She did not say a word. Brielle stood there the whole time, notepad ready, face calm, eyes steady. She understood every single syllable, but she did not react. Not yet. She took their orders, appetizers, entrees, read the specials without a single stumble. Professional, polished, like nothing happened. Then came the wine. Langford leaned back in his chair and told Bryce, still in Russian, to just pick any bottle. Order whatever. She will not know the difference between Bordeaux and bath water. Bryce laughed, a short, nervous laugh. And that is when Brielle opened her mouth in Russian. Perfect, fluent, accent-precise Russian. Actually, sir, I would recommend the Chateau Margaux. It pairs beautifully with the lamb, and I believe you will find it more refined than the Montrachet you ordered last time you dined here, Mr. Langford. She said it the way you would recommend the weather. Calm, warm, not a single crack in her voice. The table went dead silent. Langford's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Bryce put down his glass so slowly you could hear his fingers slide off the crystal. Natalia covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes were wide, not from fear, from shock. Nobody moved. The couple at the next table, who had heard the Russian earlier, turned around and stared. A man at the bar set down his drink. A waiter near the kitchen froze mid-step. The silence did not just sit at table 12. It spread. It moved across the dining room like a wave rolling through still water. Table after table, people looked over. They did not know exactly what had happened, but they felt it. Something in the air had shifted. And Brielle? She just stood there, notepad ready, pen in hand, waiting for their order. She did not smirk. She did not gloat. She did not even raise her voice. She just looked Garrett Langford dead in the eye and waited. The man who had used Russian like a weapon to mock her, to degrade her, to say things about her skin and her family and her worth, that man was now sitting in complete silence because the woman he called the help just spoke his language better than he did and recommended a better wine. Here is what most people would have done in that moment. They would have exploded. They would have shouted. They would have made a scene and walked out. Brielle did not do any of that. She stood at that table like she belonged there more than anyone else in the room, because she did. And the craziest part? Nobody at the Meridian knew she could speak Russian. Nobody knew she spoke French either, except for that couple near the entrance who were still whispering about her. Nobody knew about the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Mandarin, or the Arabic. Many languages, all living inside a young waitress making very little money. Garrett Langford picked up his napkin, pressed it against his lip, and for the first time in many years, he had absolutely nothing to say. But do not think for a second this was over, because a man like Langford, he does not get embarrassed. He gets even. And what he did next, that is where this story really begins. Yo, are you seeing this? She did not scream, did not curse. She just answered in his own language and picked a better wine. That is not just fluency. That is a whole different level. Now imagine being that good and still getting treated like dirt. Nah, that hits different. Let me take you back. Before the restaurant, before the apron, before any of it. Brielle Harlan grew up on the south side of Chicago. Small apartment, thin walls. Her mother, Corinne, worked double shifts as a night nurse. Most nights, Brielle fell asleep to the sound of the front door closing and her mother's footsteps disappearing down the hallway. But her grandfather, he was different. Every Sunday afternoon, he would sit on the porch with Brielle on his knee. He was a retired postal worker who had served overseas. Everywhere he went, he learned the language. Not from textbooks, from people. He spoke several languages. A black man from the south side of Chicago with no college degree, and he could hold a conversation in multiple tongues. He gave Brielle a small leather phrase book when she was young. Russian phrases. Dog-eared pages, pencil notes in the margins. He told her one thing she never forgot. Language is the one door nobody can lock on you. He died when she was a teenager. She kept the book. She still carries it. Every single shift, tucked right there in her apron pocket. After high school, Brielle got a scholarship to study linguistics, top of her class. Professors called her gifted. But her mother got sick. Hospital bills ate through everything. The scholarship was not enough. She had to leave school. No degree, no connections, no safety net. She applied to several translation firms. All of them rejected her. Same reason every time. No credentials. It did not matter that she could outperform half their staff. On paper, she did not exist. So she tied an apron around her waist, took a job at the Meridian. Very little money, plus tips. She studied languages on her own. Library books, free apps, conversation groups at the community center. Many languages, fluent, all self-built. And every night before her shift, she touched that little leather book in her pocket. Her grandfather's voice still in her ear. Nobody at work ever asked what she was capable of, not once. Back at table 12, Garrett Langford sat in silence for a moment. Then he decided that what just happened did not happen. He flagged down the floor manager. "I need to speak to whoever runs this place," Langford said, in English this time, loud enough for the tables nearby to hear. "Is there a problem, sir?" "The problem is your waitress. She was rude. She overstepped. I want someone else on this table now." The floor manager opened his mouth, closed it, looked toward the kitchen. He had no idea what to do. That is when Alexander Thorne appeared. He did not rush. He did not hurry. He walked to table 12 the way a man walks when he has been handling difficult people for many years. Hands behind his back, shoulders straight, face completely calm. "Mr. Langford, I am Alexander Thorne. I own the Meridian. I understand there is a concern." Langford leaned forward. "Your girl, she was out of line. I do not need a waitress trying to show off. I asked for someone experienced. Instead, you sent me that." Alexander did not blink. "Mr. Langford, Brielle is one of the most capable people in this building. If she offered a wine recommendation, I would trust it over my own sommeliers." He paused. "She stays on your table. No anger, no apologies, just fact. The way you say water is wet. The way you say the earth is round." Langford stared at him. He was not used to hearing no. Not from employees, not from business partners, and definitely not from a restaurant owner standing in front of many guests. But Alexander had already turned and walked away. Langford sat there for a long time. His jaw worked side to side. Then he made a decision. If he could not get rid of Brielle, he would break her. When she came back to the table, he was ready. He fired questions at her in Russian. Quick, complex, technical. One after another, like a machine gun. Brielle answered every single one. Not just answered, expanded. She told him details about regions, etymology, and gently corrected his pronunciation on a word he had been saying wrong his entire life. Langford's face went from smug to stiff to something else entirely, something he probably had not felt since he was a child getting scolded by a teacher. The staff noticed. A busboy near the window stopped wiping a table. 2 servers stood frozen by the bar. Cameron Hayes watched from the kitchen pass, his mouth half open. He grabbed the cook next to him. "Did you know she could do that?" The cook shook his head slowly. Cameron looked back at Brielle through the pass. The woman he had worked beside for some time, the woman who clocked in, tied her apron, served her tables, and went home. He thought he knew her. He did not know anything. And Langford? He was quiet again. But this time, his eyes had changed. This was not embarrassing anymore. This was a man deciding how to hit back. To understand what Garrett Langford did next, you need to understand how his mind works. Langford did not build a real estate empire by being polite. He built it by knowing who belongs where. That was his whole system. His entire world ran on a single belief. Some people are above, some people are below, and the ones below should stay there. He learned Russian in Moscow boardrooms, closed deals in St. Petersburg with men who drank vodka at noon and signed contracts by dinner. To him, Russian was not just a language. It was a private club, a locked room, a space where only certain people were allowed. And now, a black waitress from the south side of Chicago had walked straight through that door. That did not impress him. It offended him. It cracked the walls of everything he believed about how the world was supposed to work. While Langford sat at his table stewing, something else was happening across the dining room. Natalia Petrova, his assistant, excused herself. She said she needed the restroom. But she did not go to the restroom. She found Brielle in the hallway near the bar station. Natalia spoke quietly, in Russian. "Your pronunciation is better than his. You know that, right?" Brielle looked at her, surprised, not by the compliment, by the honesty. Natalia kept going. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "I have worked for him for some time. I have watched him talk like this to people in many cities, every country. Always the same." Brielle was quiet for a moment. Then she answered, also in Russian, "You do not have to apologize for him." Natalia's eyes filled with water. She nodded once. Then she turned and walked back to table 12 without looking back. Meanwhile, the dining room had started to shift. Sophia Reynolds, a woman sitting 2 tables away, leaned toward her companion. Did that waitress just speak Russian to him? Her companion nodded, fluently. Whispers moved from table to table. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet hum of people, slowly realizing they were watching something they had never seen before. The power in that room was changing, not through a fight, not through a scene, just through the slow, undeniable visibility of someone who was never supposed to be visible. And then, there was Brielle. After Natalia walked away, Brielle stood alone at the bar station. She was restocking glasses. Her hands moved on autopilot. Pick up, place, pick up, place. But her fingers were shaking, not from fear, not from anger, from exhaustion. She pressed her hip against the counter and felt the leather phrase book shift in her apron pocket. She did not take it out. She just felt it there, the weight of it, the familiar shape against her body. The hardest part was not the insult. It was that she had heard versions of it her entire life. Different words, different languages, but always the same message. You do not belong here. You are not enough. Stay in your lane, in English, in French, in the silence of several rejection letters from translation firms. Always the same. She took a breath, placed the last glass on the rack, straightened her apron. Then she walked back toward the dining room. Because that is what Brielle Harlan did, every single day. She absorbed it, she carried it, and she kept moving. But tonight, something in the air felt different. The whispers had not stopped. The eyes had not looked away. And somewhere in the back of the restaurant, a phone was ringing. A crisis was about to land on Alexander Thorne's desk. One that only Brielle could solve. The phone call came during the evening. A party of Brazilian diplomats had arrived for a private partnership dinner in the Meridian's back room. Everything arranged some time in advance. One problem. The interpreter did not show up. No call, no text, no explanation. just an empty chair where the interpreter was supposed to sit. The maitre d' was standing in the hallway with a phone in one hand and a seating chart in the other. His face was pale. "They speak Portuguese," he said to the floor manager. "Limited English. The foundation director is already asking questions. If we cannot communicate with them, this whole event falls apart." The floor manager looked at him. "So, what do we do?" "I have no idea." Alexander Thorne heard the commotion from across the dining room. He walked over, listened, asked 2 questions. Then he stopped talking. He looked across the restaurant. His eyes landed on Brielle. She was clearing a table near the window, stacking plates, moving the way she always moved. Quiet, efficient, invisible. Alexander walked to her. He did not rush. He spoke low enough that only she could hear. "Brielle, how is your Portuguese?" She looked at him. Fluent, Brazilian dialect. He paused, just for a second. Then he said something that mattered more than the question itself. "Would you be willing to help? I will not ask you to do anything beyond your comfort." She held his gaze. "I will do it." She untied her apron, folded it neatly on the bar counter, touched the phrase book in her pocket, just barely, just with her fingertips, and walked toward the back room. The doors opened. The Brazilian diplomats sat around a long table. Crystal glasses, white orchids in the center. The foundation director, an older man in a gray suit, was mid-conversation with his colleague, frustration all over his face. Brielle stepped in. "Good evening. My name is Brielle. I will be assisting with interpretation tonight." She said it in Portuguese, warm, relaxed, the kind of Brazilian Portuguese you hear in São Paulo living rooms. Not textbooks. The diplomats looked up. One by one, their faces changed. The frustration melted. The foundation director leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Finally," he said in Portuguese. "Someone who speaks like a human being." The whole table laughed. For the rest of the dinner, Brielle ran that room. She translated conversations. She clarified cultural references the Americans did not catch. She mediated a misunderstanding about event protocol that could have derailed the entire dinner. She did it all without a single note, without a single hesitation. The foundation director kept glancing at her between courses. Not like Langford looked at her. Not like she was furniture. He looked at her the way you look at someone who just saved your evening. And across the restaurant, through a glass partition that separated the dining room from the back, Garrett Langford was watching. He could see everything. He could see his waitress, his help, standing at the head of a table full of diplomats, commanding the room, speaking a language he did not even recognize, moving with the same calm, steady presence she had shown at his own table. Except now, nobody was laughing at her. They were listening to her. Bryce Caldwell leaned over to Langford. "Garrett, who is that woman?" Langford did not answer. He picked up his wine glass, took a long sip, and said nothing. But his hand, wrapped around the stem of that glass, was white at the knuckles, because now he had a new problem. It is hard to call someone the help when the whole room just watched her do something you never could. The diplomat dinner ended. 8 handshakes. 3 business cards exchanged. The foundation director held Brielle's hand with both of his and said in Portuguese, "You made tonight possible." She smiled, nodded. Then she walked back through the glass doors into the main dining room. The apron was still folded on the bar counter where she had left it. She picked it up, tied it back on, touched the phrase book in her pocket. And just like that, she was a waitress again. But Alexander Thorne was waiting for her. He was standing near the hallway that led to his office, arms at his sides, no clipboard, no phone, just standing there like a man who had something important to say and wanted to get it exactly right. "Brielle, come with me for a moment." She followed him into his office. Small room. Wooden desk. A framed certificate on the wall from his diplomatic years. Bookshelves lined with titles in French and German. A single lamp casting warm light across everything. Alexander sat on the edge of his desk. He did not sit behind it. He sat on the edge, facing her, like an equal. That was the most impressive thing I have seen in many years of running this place. She did not respond. She was not used to hearing words like that. He let the silence sit. Then he asked a question nobody had ever asked her at work. "How many languages, Brielle?" "Many." He absorbed that. Did not gasp. Did not overreact. Just nodded slowly, the way a man nods when something he suspected turns out to be true. "Why are you waiting tables?" And there it was. The question that cut through everything, she told him. The scholarship. Leaving school. Her mother's illness. The hospital bills. The rejections. All of it. In less than some time, standing in a restaurant office on a busy night, Alexander listened. He did not interrupt. He did not tilt his head with pity. He just listened, the way someone listens when they actually care about the answer. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said this: "I spent many years in diplomacy. I still have contacts. State Department, UN liaison offices, international organizations, people who need exactly what you can do." He paused. "I have known interpreters with half your skill earning very good money. The world wastes talent like this every single day, and I refuse to be part of it." He was not offering charity. He was offering a door. The kind of door her grandfather told her about. The one nobody can lock. Brielle looked at him. Her eyes were steady, but something behind them shifted. Something old and tired and carefully guarded began to crack. Just a little. She did not say yes. Not yet. Years of rejection had taught her not to trust moments like this. She touched the phrasebook in her pocket. Maybe it was time to stop carrying her grandfather's words alone. Maybe it was time someone else finally heard them. Brielle stepped out of Alexander's office and walked straight into Sophia Reynolds. Sophia was standing near the bar station. Mid-40s, sharp blazer. The kind of woman who looked like she ran something. Because she did. "I am sorry to stop you," Sophia said. "My name is Sophia Reynolds. I run a foundation that funds language education in underserved neighborhoods here in Chicago." Brielle nodded. Polite, guarded. "I heard you speak Russian to that man at table 12, Sophia continued. "And I just watched you walk into that back room and interpret for an entire diplomatic dinner." She paused. "Have you ever considered teaching?" Brielle blinked. The question hit her somewhere she was not expecting. "I never thought anyone would want me to." Sophia held her gaze for a long moment. Then she pulled a card from her purse and placed it in Brielle's hand. "Call me on Monday. I am serious." Before Brielle could respond, another voice came from behind her. Natalia Petrova. This time, Natalia was not hiding in the hallway. She was standing right there in the middle of the dining room, in full view of everyone. She handed Brielle a business card, her personal card, not Langford's company. She spoke in Russian, quietly, but clearly. "I know people in Moscow who would hire you tomorrow. Do not let him make you small." Then she turned and walked back to table 12 without looking back. 2 women, 2 cards, 2 doors opening in the span of moments. Brielle stood there holding both cards. She did not move. Then a hand touched her shoulder. Cameron. He had come out of the kitchen, still wearing his chef's coat, flour on his sleeve. His eyes were red. "For some time, we have worked together. I stood right next to you every shift, and I did not know." "Why did you never say anything?" Brielle looked at him. Her best friend at this job, the guy who shared his lunch with her, who covered her tables when she was running late, who told her jokes during the slow shifts. She shrugged. Nobody asked. 2 words. That is all she said. Nobody asked. Cameron pulled her into a hug. Tight. The kind you give when words are not enough. Behind them, through the kitchen pass, the line cooks were watching. One of them started clapping. Slow. Steady. Then another joined. Then another. It built from the kitchen outward until Brielle could feel it in her chest. She laughed. A real laugh. The first one all night. But the night was not over, because Garrett Langford was still sitting at table 12, and he was about to make his final move. Garrett Langford had been sitting at table 12 for some time of being outsmarted, outspoken, outclassed by a woman he had called the help. He was done being quiet. He flagged down the floor manager again, but this time he did not ask for a new server. He did not file a complaint. He did something worse. He raised his voice. I want to speak to the owner. Now. Right now. The tables around him went still. Forks paused. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. When a man like Garrett Langford raises his voice in a place like the Meridian, people listen. The floor manager nodded and disappeared. Langford did not wait. He stood up, pushed his chair back, and said, loud enough for many in the restaurant to hear, "This is ridiculous. I come here to have a meal, and instead, I get a waitress who abandons my table to go play translator in the back room." He straightened his jacket. She was not hired to network. She was not hired to show off. She was hired to bring plates and pour wine. That is it. Bryce stared at his bread plate. Natalia looked at the window. Neither of them said a word. Then Langford delivered the line that sealed everything. People should know their place. He said it the way you say something you have believed your entire life. Not angry, not emotional, just certain. Like gravity, like a law of nature. The dining room was completely silent, and then Alexander Thorne walked out. He appeared from the hallway near the kitchen. Same calm walk, same straight shoulders, same steady eyes. He crossed the dining room without rushing, every step deliberate, every pair of eyes in the room following him. He stopped at table 12. "Mr. Langford, you wanted to speak with me?" "Yes, I did." Langford pointed toward the back room. "Your waitress left my table, to go translate for some event in your back room. That is unacceptable. That is not her job." Alexander nodded, listening the way a diplomat listens, fully, completely, without interruption. Then he spoke. "Mr. Langford, some time ago, a diplomatic event in our private dining room was about to collapse. No interpreter. Several foreign guests. A major cultural partnership on the line." He paused. "Brielle Harlan, the woman you have been insulting all evening, walked into that room and single-handedly saved it. She interpreted an entire dinner in fluent Portuguese, Brazilian dialect, without a single note." Another pause. "She also speaks Russian, French, Spanish, Mandarin, and Arabic. Many languages, all self-taught while working full-time, while supporting her mother and while being told over and over that she was not qualified." The room was so quiet you could hear the candles flicker. Alexander took one step closer to Langford. "You came into my restaurant and insulted one of the most talented people I have ever employed, in a language she speaks better than you do." His voice did not rise. It did not need to. "If anyone here needs to know their place, Mr. Langford, it is not her." Silence. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. Then Sophia Reynolds started clapping. Alone at first. Just her hands, slow and steady. Then the French couple near the entrance joined. The woman was crying. Then the bartender. Then a man in a gray suit by the window. Then a couple near the back wall who had been watching everything since the beginning. Table by table, person by person, the applause moved across that dining room like a wave. Not loud, not wild, not a standing ovation at a concert. This was different. This was deliberate. This was many people saying, "We saw everything. We heard everything. And we are choosing her side." Natalia Petrova stood up from table 12. She pushed her chair back, stepped away from Langford, and turned to face Brielle. She clapped slowly, standing apart from the man who had signed her paychecks for some time. Bryce did not clap. He sat, frozen, eyes locked on the tablecloth. His bread was untouched. His wine was warm. And Garrett Langford? The blood drained from his face. His hand gripped the napkin so hard his knuckles turned white. His eyes darted around the room, left, right, behind him, looking for a single ally. He found none. Not one person in that restaurant was on his side. This was a man who had closed deals worth many millions. A man who had stared down powerful figures and never blinked. A man who believed, truly, deeply believed, that money made him untouchable. And now he was standing in a dining room full of strangers who had just chosen a waitress over him. Not because anyone threatened him, not because anyone yelled, because everyone simply chose not to look away. Brielle stood near the spar station. She had not moved, had not spoken. The applause washed over her, and she let it. Her hands were still. Her jaw was relaxed. Her eyes were clear. She did not smile triumphantly. She did not cry. She touched the phrasebook in her pocket. Just once. Just with her fingertips. Then she walked to table 12. The applause faded as she moved step by step. The click of her shoes on marble. The same sound from the beginning of the night. The same walk. The same woman. But everything had changed. She set down the check, looked Garrett Langford in the eye, and said in English, calm as still water, "Thank you for dining with us, Mr. Langford. I hope you enjoyed the Chateau Margaux." The same wine she had recommended in Russian at the start of the evening. The same moment. Full circle. Then she turned and she walked away. Langford did not say a word. He reached into his jacket, pulled out his wallet, dropped several $100 bills on the table, no tip, and stood up. He walked toward the exit without looking at anyone. Bryce followed 2 steps behind. Natalia stayed where she was. The door closed behind him, and the dining room exhaled. Like many people had been holding their breath for some time, and finally let it go. But this story is not about Garrett Langford leaving. It is about what happened after he was gone. The moment Langford walked out that door, the dining room changed. It was like someone had opened a window in a room that had been sealed shut all night. People started breathing again. Conversations resumed. But they were different now. Quieter. Warmer. Like everyone in that room shared something they had not shared an hour ago. Sophia Reynolds was the first to move. She stood up from her table, crossed the dining room, and found Brielle near the kitchen entrance. She did not waste time. "I meant what I said earlier. I run language programs in several schools across the South Side. We have never had a teacher who speaks as many languages as you do. You speak many." She pressed her business card into Brielle's hand again. Firmer this time. "Call me on Monday. Not because I feel sorry for you. Because I need you." Brielle looked down at the card. Her thumb ran across the printed letters. She nodded. Behind Sophia, 2 more people approached. One was a travel executive, a man in his 50s who had been sitting near the bar all evening. He handed Brielle his card and said he was looking for multilingual staff for his company's international division. The other was a woman who did not have a card, did not have a title. She just wanted to shake Brielle's hand. "I have been coming here for some time. Tonight is the first time I will remember." Then the restaurant slowly emptied. Coats retrieved. Bills settled. Cars pulled up to the curb outside. One by one, the tables cleared. The The candles burned low. The last guests left. The meridian went quiet. Closing time. The staff moved through their routines, wiping down tables, stacking chairs, polishing glasses. But there was a hum underneath it all, a frequency, something unspoken that everyone felt but nobody tried to name. Alexander Thorne appeared in the hallway outside his office. "Brielle, 1 more minute." She followed him in. The office looked the same as before. The warm lamp, the bookshelves, the framed certificate on the wall. But this time, Alexander opened a drawer in his desk. He pulled out a small box, dark blue, velvet. He opened it. Inside was a gold pin, shaped like a compass rose, small enough to fit in your palm, the kind of thing you would miss if you were not looking. But once you saw it, you could not look away. "A mentor gave me this many years ago," Alexander said, "when I was a young diplomat. I had just handled a crisis negotiation. Everyone said I was too inexperienced, too green, too new, but I did it anyway." He turned the pin over in his fingers. "He told me the compass rose does not point to where you have been. It points to where you are supposed to go." He stepped forward and pinned it to Brielle's apron, right next to the pocket where the phrasebook sat. "You do not need a degree to prove what you are, but the world needs to catch up to you. Let me help with that." Brielle looked down at the pin. Gold against black fabric. Tiny but bright. Right next to her grandfather's book. She did not cry, but her breath caught, just for a second, just enough. "Thank you," she said, barely above a whisper. Alexander nodded once, then he left the room. No big speech, no dramatic exit, just a man who saw someone clearly and acted on it. Brielle stood alone in the office for a moment. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the phrasebook. She opened it to the first page. The handwriting was shaky, pencil on yellowed paper. Her grandfather's hand, unsteady from age, but deliberate in every stroke. For Brie, learn every word, then teach them to someone. She ran her thumb across the ink. Slowly. The way you touch something sacred. Many years she had carried this book. Through school, through the scholarship, through leaving, through the rejection letters, through every shift at the meridian. Many years of holding on to a voice that had gone silent. And tonight, for the first time, the book did not feel like a memory. It felt like a beginning. The months that followed moved fast. Brielle started teaching weekend language classes at Sophia Reynolds' foundation. Her first group, several kids from the neighborhood, ages young to teen. Mostly Black and Latino. Kids from families where nobody owned a passport. Kids who had never left Chicago. She taught them Russian first. One of the kids raised his hand on the first day. "Why Russian? Nobody here speaks Russian," Brielle smiled. "Because it is the hardest one, and you should always start with the thing people say you cannot do." The room went quiet. Then one girl in the back row sat up a little straighter. Alexander's contacts opened doors. Real doors. Within some time, Brielle was offered a contract position with an international trade consultancy. Part-time. Flexible. The kind of work that used every language she spoke. She accepted. But she did not quit the meridian. She kept one shift a week. Friday nights. Cameron asked her why. "Keeps me grounded," she said. "Reminds me where I started." She still wore the apron. The phrasebook still sat in the pocket. And now, right next to it, the compass rose. As for Garrett Langford, sometime later, a business journal ran a profile on his latest deal. A real estate partnership in Eastern Europe. It had collapsed. Former associates were quoted in the article. They cited his inability to work with local partners and his dismissive interpersonal style. The article did not mention the Meridian. It did not mention Brielle. It did not need to. Some things do not need to be said out loud. They just catch up to you. And on a morning in spring, in a small classroom on the south side of Chicago, a young girl stood up in front of her classmates. She cleared her throat, looked at Brielle, and said in careful, halting but perfect Russian, "My name is Destiny. I am from Chicago, and I am learning every word." Brielle smiled. Not the polite smile she gave guests at the Meridian, not the guarded smile she wore when strangers asked what she did for a living. This one was real. It started in her eyes and moved outward, slow and warm, until it filled the whole room. She looked at Destiny, and for just a second she saw herself. Young, sitting on a porch, a leather book in her hands, a voice in her ear saying, "Learn every word. Then teach them to someone." Here is the thing about Brielle Harlan. She was not hiding. She was never hiding. She was right there, in plain sight, every single day. Tying her apron, carrying plates, pouring wine, saying good evening to people who looked right through her. Many languages lived inside that woman, many entire worlds. And nobody knew. Not because she was ashamed, but because nobody thought to ask a waitress what she was capable of. And that is not just Brielle's story. That is everywhere. The cashier at your grocery store who has an engineering degree from another country. The janitor at your office who can solve equations your manager cannot. The Uber driver who was a surgeon back home. We see the uniform. We see the name tag. And we decide in a moment what that person is worth. We do it without thinking, without meaning to, without even realizing it, but the cost is real. We see the uniform, we see the name tag, and we decide in a moment what that person is worth. We need to build real paths for people like Brielle. Skills first hiring, language proficiency assessments, talent auditions that do not require a 4-year degree to walk through the door. Some organizations are already doing this work. But it is not enough. Not yet. Every time we reduce a person to a job title, we lose something we cannot measure. Every time we look past someone because of where they come from, we miss what they could become. Brielle's grandfather gave her a phrase book and a single piece of advice. Learn every word. Then teach them to someone. She did both. And right now, in a classroom on the south side of Chicago, several kids are learning Russian. Not because they need it, because someone finally told them they could. The most powerful language in any room is the one nobody expected you to speak. Man, imagine speaking many languages and still being called the help. Put yourself in her shoes. Would you keep going? That is why I tell these stories. Drop a comment, like, share, subscribe. These stories need to be heard.